The Chinese government has reportedly instructed its carriers to halt the delivery of Boeing aircraft for the time being, a decision that also extends to aircraft-related equipment and parts from US companies. This development comes amidst an ongoing trade conflict between the US and China. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has hinted at a potential deal with China in the future, while President Donald Trump has reaffirmed his firm trade stance, stating that no country, especially China, would be exempt from his broad tariffs. The US economy has recently experienced significant turbulence, prompting some to call it a potential turning point. On one hand, large retail chains are consistently cancelling major orders from China, while on the other hand, a backlog of containers at Chinese ports is threatening the global flow of trade. As trade tensions between the US and China escalate, questions arise about the impact of new tariffs and logistical costs on supply chains. Is this situation driving supply chains down an irreversible path? In recent weeks, reports from American media have indicated that many major Chinese importers are cancelling one order after another, especially leading e-commerce platforms and major US retailers, which are allegedly facing a sharp decline in Chinese products. Some economists fear that this could lead to significant gaps in the supply chain, with a growing number of containers at Chinese ports no longer being loaded and some even being withdrawn. The scale of these cancelled orders is reportedly large, enough to affect the shipping industry, contributing to a recession in that sector. The key question is why the US is suddenly cancelling such a high volume of orders. Is it the tariffs driving these cancellations? Or are there other factors at play? According to leaked information from official sources, the recently imposed additional tariffs, which are expected to remain for the foreseeable future, are pushing import costs to unprecedented levels. The US administration's announcement of much higher tariffs on certain products related to defense and strategic technologies is causing concern among companies working with Chinese manufacturers. These tariffs could affect a broad range of products, from electronic components to pharmaceutical raw materials and consumer electronics, at a time when inflationary pressures are rising in the US domestic market. The higher cost of imported goods is naturally squeezing retailers' profit margins. This has led some large companies to avoid passing these additional costs on to consumers or selling at a loss. As for Chinese manufacturers, many have reportedly taken to social media, stating that they will not offer discounts. US buyers seeking to lower prices on pre-ordered goods or negotiate additional benefits have encountered resistance. Some sources even claim that Chinese suppliers are refusing to back down, stating that a significant portion of exports has already declined and they must protect their costs. Manufacturers have been complaining about rising raw material prices and labor costs for some time, and this crisis could have severe consequences for both sides. Indeed, the increasing backlog of containers at ports could result in major bottlenecks in global logistics. Some of the largest US retail chains are reportedly cutting back on their Chinese sourcing and looking for alternatives. Official sources claim that companies are attempting to lower tariffs by shifting sourcing to Southeast Asian countries or other regions. In other words, American retailers may be opting for cheaper alternatives due to rising costs caused by Chinese tariffs. The trend of withdrawing supply chains is shedding light on this issue. Some believe these steps may mark a new phase for the global economy, while others view it as a temporary fluctuation. But is it really temporary? Some trade experts predict that the situation could persist for a long time, particularly if new US tax and tariff policies become permanent. These protectionist policies, which align with the Trump administration's approach, aim to boost the competitiveness of American producers in the domestic market. However, for this to succeed, both retailers and large e-commerce platforms would need to prioritize more expensive, domestically produced products. This shift is not easy to achieve, as China remains the world's manufacturing hub, producing millions of products across various categories, from electronics to textiles, often at a lower cost than other countries. When tariffs undermine this price advantage, market balance is disrupted. While some businesses are seeking new markets with cheaper labor, major shipping companies are also facing uncertainty, as unfulfilled or cancelled orders put them in a difficult position. The increasing number of empty containers at ports is causing rapid disruptions in the shipping industry. Freight prices are declining, while port operators have started incurring losses. On the other hand, consumers may experience price fluctuations, especially in categories like electronics, clothing, and household goods. Tariff pressures and supply. Chain shifts. If a retailer shifts operations from China to a more expensive country, the higher costs are likely to be passed on to consumers. As prices rise and demand falls, the supply chain is further squeezed, creating a vicious cycle. This cycle is also affecting companies like Amazon and other large online retailers. Chinese sellers previously dominated a significant portion of Amazon's marketplace, offering affordable products that drove high sales volumes, benefiting both Amazon and the sellers. Now, with the rise in tariffs, some Chinese sellers may raise prices or withdraw from the market altogether. According to some social media reports, small and medium-sized sellers are informing US customers that they are revising prices due to higher taxes. Others are announcing their exit from the US market, which could reduce Amazon's product diversity and its competitive edge. Less competition could lead to higher prices and more money out of consumers' pockets. Meanwhile, Chinese suppliers are seeking ways to offset their losses. There are rumors that some companies are resorting to semi-legal or illegal practices to mitigate the additional tax burden. For example, there are allegations that some may be undervaluing exports to reduce customs duties. These methods, if discovered, could result in severe penalties and reputational damage, but they are seen as the only option for some suppliers. There are also rumors that US customs authorities are intensifying efforts to crack down on such fraudulent activities, with new inspection mechanisms being introduced. This could escalate tensions between the two countries. Impact on US consumers and inflation. In public statements, the White House has emphasized the goal of strengthening domestic production. For years, US companies have benefited from cheap manufacturing overseas, especially in China. Now the US seeks a strategic transformation of its supply chains, though the government has indicated that this change will be gradual rather than immediate. This transformation could disrupt industries such as technology, automotive, textiles, and pharmaceuticals, all of which depend on China. The US administration is reportedly considering new tariffs, particularly on computer chips and pharmaceutical raw materials. If implemented, this could further escalate the trade conflict with China. US companies are grappling with rising tariffs and logistics costs on one hand, and inflationary pressures and declining consumer confidence following the pandemic on the other. If these companies pass higher costs onto consumers, sales could decline, eroding profits. If they don't, profit margins will shrink due to inventory costs and additional taxes. leaving companies in a real dilemma. This dilemma may explain claims that the US is cancelling large-scale orders. It seems companies are adopting a wait-and-see approach until new taxes come into effect. The Chinese side is closely monitoring these cancellations, with some social media accounts sharing images of containers stacked up in Chinese ports. Some containers are reportedly empty, but many are orders that were cancelled and could not find new buyers. If this trend continues, China's export revenues could fall significantly, potentially slowing down the Chinese economy. Both the US and China are dominant players in global trade, and any disruption in their relationship would affect other regions as well, such as Europe, Asia, and even Africa. The global supply chain operates as an interconnected system, meaning that changes in one area can have ripple effects worldwide. China's perspective and no discount policy. It's not just retail and e-commerce that are affected by these tensions. The automotive industry, construction, and even technology giants are also feeling the impact. Semiconductor chip manufacturers, in particular, are waiting for the US to announce new tariffs, which could lead to delays and changes in supply agreements. If tariffs on chips and similar high-tech products rise further, the prices of products like smartphones and computers could increase significantly. Some analysts predict that consumers may opt for older devices instead of upgrading to new models, which could potentially lead to a downturn in the technology sector. Both countries have their advantages. China wields significant influence in global markets due to its export power, while the US controls the largest consumer market. As the tariff dispute continues, both sides are carefully observing any signs of compromise or retreat. Experts suggest that, as the back and forth over tariffs persists, large-scale cancellations and container congestion could become more common.